Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, reactions pour in from both sides of the aisle after President Biden pardoned his son, Hunter Biden. President-elect Trump now raising the prospect of pardoning January 6th defendants. And Senator Joe Manchin is calling on Biden to pardon Trump to make things balanced. Iris Tao reports. Terrorists in Syria keep fighting the Iran-backed government. The U.S. now explaining for the first time where it stands on the situation. Arian Pazdar has the latest. And President Biden visits Angola to support a key railroad project. How the project could affect China and the race for key minerals. An Epoch Times reporter joins us to discuss from Africa.
This is NTD Evening News. Live from our global headquarters in New York City, here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. President Biden is shielding his son from jail time and fines in two separate legal cases. Biden made the statements about the pardon last night. That's after saying previously he won't get involved. NTD's Melina Weiskup has the story.
With 7 weeks left in the Oval Office, President Biden has given an unconditional pardon to his son, Hunter Biden, for any offenses he has committed or may have committed from January 1st of 2014 until now. The pardon comes as Hunter Biden is awaiting sentencing later this month for two separate cases, 9 counts for evading over $1 million in taxes and 3 counts for illegally buying a firearm while using drugs. After being found guilty, Hunter could have faced up to 17 years behind bars and over $1 million in fines, consequences he will now no longer need to face. The pardon marks a change and comes after the president and the White House several times told reporters that a pardon was not on the table.
We've been asked that question multiple times. Our answer stands, which is no.
So why the change? The president says he believes his son was treated differently than an average American in the courtroom. Biden said, quote, "Hunter was singled out only because he is my son, and that is wrong," ending his statement by explaining further, "I believe in the justice system, but as I have wrestled with this, I also believe raw politics has infected this process, and it led to a miscarriage of justice," further saying that he hopes Americans will understand why a father and a president would come to this decision. Hunter Biden described his wrongdoing as, quote, "mistakes that have been exploited to publicly humiliate and shame me and my family for political sport." The younger Biden is now vowing to devote his life to helping others with addiction, saying, "In recovery, we can be given the opportunity to make amends where possible and rebuild our lives if we never take for granted the mercy that we have been afforded." Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Prosecutors now pushing back against dismissing Hunter Biden's tax case as the White House defends the president's call to pardon his son. It comes as President-elect Trump urges President Biden to free the January 6th defendants. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has more.
A day after President Biden announced his intention to pardon Hunter Biden, saying his son was treated differently, Special Counsel David Weiss, who prosecuted Hunter Biden on tax and gun charges, and pushed back, saying, quote, "There has never been any evidence of vindicative or selective prosecution in this case." The White House, meanwhile, defending the president's pardon.
He also believes that raw politics infected the process and it led to a miscarriage of justice. He believes his son was unfairly targeted.
The press secretary on Monday also denied reports that President Biden had been considering pardoning his son since his conviction in June, insisting that President Biden only made up his mind this past weekend. And First Lady Jill Biden on Monday said, it comes as President-elect Trump on Sunday night raised the prospect of mass pardoning January 6 defendants, saying they were subject to, quote, "abuse and miscarriage of justice." And Trump has repeatedly vowed to give clemency to January 6 defendants, particularly those who didn't commit violence. And on Monday, Senator Joe Manchin called on President Biden to pardon Trump on all his charges.
And make it, it had gone down a lot lot more balanced, if you will.
And Trump's new administration continues to take shape. On Monday, Trump announced that he's picking billionaire investment banker Warren Stevens to be his ambassador to the UK. It comes as Pete Hegseth, his pick for defense secretary, and Pam Bondi, his pick for attorney general, were meeting senators on Capitol Hill on Monday to raise their prospects of getting confirmed. Reporting from the White House, Iris Howe, NTD News.
Senator Bernie Sanders says he agrees with Department of Government Efficiency co-head Elon Musk in regards to the Pentagon budget. This assessment has been getting more bipartisan support since the Pentagon failed its 7th audit in a row. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
Independent Senator Bernie Sanders posted on X that changes need to happen with the Department of Defense budget, agreeing with Elon Musk. The Vermont senator said Elon Musk is right. The Pentagon, with a budget of $886 billion, just failed its 7th audit in a row. It's lost track of billions. Last year, only 13 senators voted against the military-industrial complex and a defense budget full of waste and fraud. That must change. Musk replied to Sanders' post with American flag emojis. Musk will co-head the incoming Trump administration's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. The department has been already making public comments and assessments on social media. In November, the Department of Defense announced it had failed its 7th independent audit in a row. Both Republicans and Democrats have been expressing concern over the news. During 2024, the DoD was authorized to receive $824 billion in government money. According to the Pentagon's chief financial officer, Mike McCord, no significant fraud was uncovered during the audit. He told reporters that the department is working toward a clean audit, which will likely be possible in several years. California Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna has expressed support for DOGE's comments about the Pentagon while on CNN.
Let me provide an area where there could be bipartisan collaboration. I mean, the defense budget, which is nearly $1 trillion, is dominated by 5 primes. There has been tremendous reporting about the waste, fraud, and abuse in that budget. The Pentagon hasn't passed an audit and has failed the last 6 or 7 audits.
But DOGE also has its critics. Democratic Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett says she thinks the department will be a waste of government money itself.
Don't let it be lost on you that they are talking about getting rid of wasting money while creating a new agency to somehow get rid of wasting money, right? Like, it's a joke.
This isn't the first time Senator Sanders has expressed alignment with one of the Trump administration's intentions. On November 15th, he posted on X that he's looking forward to working with Trump on fulfilling his promise to cap credit card interest rates at 10%. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
And what do Americans think about President Biden's decision to pardon his son? NTD's Sam Wong was out on the National Mall in D.C. to hear from them.
Not surprised. It was a politicized case, most of it.
Was it the right thing to do? I don't know. But would I have done that for my son? Absolutely.
Why does he get special treatment? Just because his dad was a president? If he has the power to do so, okay, what can we do about it?
Well, I mean, just to pardon his son, why not give him a second chance? Everybody get a second chance.
Article 2 of the Constitution was never intended for a president to pardon a family member.
I feel bad for him and his son, right? I'm a father, but, you know, you made your bed, you have to sleep in it.
It's a good sign, good for the country, and I think it's going to take the United States a long way ahead.
I mean, it just seems like classic Washington, you know, whatever. Everyone's pardoning themselves, nepotism, all that stuff.
And I understand why he did it, but it was immoral for him to do that. And I'm surprised he did it after saying during the campaign he wouldn't.
If you look at all of these cases that stacked up against Hunter in the past, do you think politics kind of played into the process of it, or do you think they were fair and square?
No, politics definitely plays a place in it. You know, there's a lot of back and forth, and then there's a lot of things behind closed doors that we never see.
From the Ukrainian thing to the laptop to tax evasion, it's just time to let it all go.
There could be some truth to it, but as long as justice prevails, things go well.
It could be fair, and it could be politically motivated. So let the jury of his peers decide on that.
Politics always played into basically everything that you're dealing with here in America, period.
I think politics is always involved, but how about the people that have committed gun crimes who are sitting in a federal prison right now? Nobody's above the law, right?
I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm an MOR, middle of the road. I feel sorry for his son, but his son did some terrible things over decades, and he should be punished.
How is Washington reacting to Hunter Biden's pardon and Trump's nomination of Kash Patel as FBI director? Tune into Capitol Report with Steve Lance at 7 p.m. Eastern on NTD to hear from Curtis Hill, a former state attorney general. President Biden is fulfilling a promise made earlier in his presidency to visit Africa. He's spending 3 days in Angola, where he will focus on a railroad project designed to redirect critical minerals away from China. The project is partly funded with a U.S. loan. It links the resource-rich Democratic Republic of Congo and Zambia to the Angolan port of Lobito on the Atlantic Ocean. That offers a fast and efficient route for exports to the West. At stake are vast supplies of minerals like copper and cobalt, which are found in Congo and are a key component of batteries and other electronics. China is the most active investor in the Congo, something Washington is concerned about. Former Trump officials say Trump is likely to continue backing the Lobito corridor. More civilians are reported dead in Syria today. That's as terrorists keep fighting the Iran-backed government. The U.S. now explaining for the first time where it stands on the situation. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pasdar has the details and a warning. The story contains footage some viewers may find disturbing.
New video released on Monday appears to show the aftermath of a strike by the Syrian military against terrorists trying to topple the government. 13 civilians are reported dead after the attack. NTD could not independently verify this number. Fires are burning and buildings are reduced to rubble. Russia is helping Syria's government to stop the terrorists from making additional gains. Military jets from the two countries are striking the cities of Idlib and Aleppo to stop the uprising. The terrorists already controlled Idlib before their advance. They're now believed to hold big parts of Aleppo as well. Injured civilians, including kids, are being brought to the hospital as fighting continues. Besides Russia, Iran and even Hezbollah are supporting the Syrian government as well. But the White House on Monday clarifying that this doesn't mean the U.S. supports the other side.
The group that's moving in on Aleppo is a designated terrorist group by the United States. So these are not good folks.
So what is the official stance of the United States? The State Department on Monday laying out what the U.S. wants to see happen.
De-escalation and protection of civilians.
But the main thing the United States says it wants is the implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 2254. The resolution aims for the current regime and the opposition to hold democratic elections. Right now, Bashar al-Assad is still the head of the Syrian government.
Assad is a brutal dictator with blood on his hands.
A Syrian opposition leader on Monday confirming that the terrorists are attacking now because Russia and Iran are focused on conflicts outside of Syria.
So the moment there were a ceasefire in Lebanon, they found that the opportunity is good for them to start.
The attack by the terrorists is the biggest challenge to the Syrian government in years. Experts expect the government to try to crush the uprising as quickly as possible. Arian Pasdar, NTD News.
Hezbollah fired 2 projectiles toward Israel today. According to the Israeli military, the projectiles landed in an open area and no one was injured. The military did not specify the type of projectile fired. Hours later, Israel's military said it began striking what it called terror targets in Lebanon. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called Hezbollah's attack a serious violation of the ceasefire and vowed to retaliate. Both sides have been accusing each other of violating the ceasefire agreement with Hezbollah. Prior to today's exchange, Israel had also carried out daily strikes in Lebanon. Today, Israel's foreign minister said that Israel's actions were enforcing the ceasefire agreement.
We hear claims that Israel is violating the ceasefire understandings in Lebanon. On the contrary, Israel is enforcing them in response to Hezbollah's violations which demand immediate action. For example, when armed Hezbollah terrorists are identified in southern Lebanon or when they attempt to move weapons. Their presence south of the Litani River is the most basic violation of the understandings.
The ceasefire went into effect last Wednesday and paused more than a year of hostilities between Israel and the U.S.-designated terror group. According to Lebanese authorities, at least 2 people were killed earlier today in Israeli strikes. The temporary truce stipulates that Israel will not carry out offensive military operations in Lebanon. Lebanon has agreed to prevent any armed groups, including Hezbollah, from carrying out attacks against Israel. Meanwhile, in Gaza, a number of hostages remain in Hamas captivity. Trump posted on Truth Social today saying, quote, "If the hostages are not released prior to January 20th, 2025, there will be all hell to pay in the Middle East. And for those in charge who perpetrated these atrocities against humanity, those responsible will be hit harder than anybody has been hit in the long and storied history of the United States of America. Release the hostages now." Coming up, Governor Gavin Newsom calls a special legislative session to prepare California for possible legal challenges under the incoming Trump administration. Lawmakers are considering $25 million in funding to defend state policies on immigration, abortion, and climate issues. Christina Corona brings us more from the Golden State. A startup founder declares on social media that his company offers no work-life balance. He says the company has an 84-hour work week. David Lamb has more on the X post, which has gone viral. And the CEO of Intel abruptly retires. The move comes as the chip giant struggles to compete in the AI revolution, while the company is lagging behind after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. California Governor Gavin Newsom and state lawmakers convened a special session Monday to prepare for potential legal battles ahead of Donald Trump's presidency. The Democratic governor is positioning California as a central force in opposing a conservative federal agenda. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more.
As California prepares for potential legal battles against the incoming Trump administration, Governor Gavin Newsom is requesting $25 million to strengthen the Attorney General's Legal Defense Fund. The fund is designed to protect the state's policies on immigration, abortion, and climate issues. Assemblymember Jesse Gabriel, who introduced the funding bill, pledged that the state will vigorously defend its values against federal overreach. California has a history of challenging the Trump administration, with more than 120 lawsuits filed during his first term, resulting in key victories on immigration and census issues.
The last time this administration was in power, of the lawsuits that we were forced to file against the administration because it violated the law, California prevailed in 80% of those lawsuits and saved our state an enormous amount of money.
Congressman Vince Fong, who represents California's Central Valley Farm region, suggested that the state collaborate with the incoming Trump administration instead. Newsom is also proposing measures to counter potential federal actions. Those measures include reviving electric vehicle rebates and creating a backup disaster relief fund. Despite a looming $2 billion budget deficit, Newsom calls the legal fund a crucial investment in protecting California. However, some lawmakers oppose this approach.
We do not need to be going down the path of spending more taxpayer dollars, suing the federal government to create an adversarial relationship so we can't take care of the many problems. I know we paint this rosy picture of California. We have a lot of problems, and we need cooperation to fix it.
With a Democratic supermajority in the legislature, the state aims to finalize the measures before Trump's inauguration on January 20th. Christina Corona, NTD News.
Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger has retired effective yesterday, though the company made the announcement today. Why Intel is struggling to keep up with its peers. Here's the story.
This was a period of rebuilding the company.
Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger has abruptly retired. Gelsinger worked to rebuild the struggling chip maker as the explosive success of competitors like NVIDIA and AMD left Intel in the shadows.
Intel has,
kind of bit the same bullet that Hewlett-Packard and some of these other great technology companies that have just got set in their ways and didn't innovate.
Tech consultant Bob Bilbrook says Intel was very dependent on making central processing units, or CPUs, which act as the brains of personal computers. They handle general-purpose computing like Microsoft Word. But Intel missed out on the smartphone revolution. The company turned down Steve Jobs' offer to use its chips in the first-ever iPhone. Intel was concerned about the iPhone's profit margins. Intel also missed out on the AI revolution. AI uses primarily graphics processing units, or GPUs, not Intel's CPUs.
I see them being more of M&A target. The most logical partner there would be Qualcomm. The reason why that is for the manufacturing capacity, and Qualcomm's got the technology to kind of lead the way there.
Bilbrook, a former Qualcomm consultant, says Intel's days of dominance are over. During its peak, Intel was the preeminent supplier of CPUs during the 1990s PC revolution. But Bilbrook says stagnation and lack of experimentation have led to the situation today.
Coming up, President Biden is visiting Africa to counter Chinese influence in the region. Epoch Times correspondent Amala Khan, who's in Africa right now covering this development, joins us to discuss. An investigation found tomato puree sold in several UK and German supermarkets and marketed as Italian may contain tomatoes grown and picked using forced labor in China. Malcolm Hudson brings us more from London after the break. Welcome back. If you're just joining us now, here are some of today's top headlines. The White House defended President Biden's decision to pardon his son Hunter Biden, saying politics infected Hunter's case and led to a miscarriage of justice. Republicans and some Democrats criticized the president for breaking his earlier promise not to pardon his son. President-elect Trump nominated Kash Patel as FBI director. Patel worked in the Pentagon during the first Trump administration and has vowed to reform the FBI. In Syria, armed terrorists continue to fight the government, which is backed by Russia and Iran. The U.S. State Department said it wants to see de-escalation and the implementation of democratic elections in the country. President Biden began his long-promised visit to Africa to showcase a U.S.-backed railway project in Zambia, the Congo, and Angola. He has pushed the investment as a new approach to countering China's influence in the region. And joining us now to discuss Biden's visit is Amel Khan, senior White House correspondent for the Epoch Times. She's in Angola right now covering Biden's latest actions. Amel, thank you so much for joining us. Now, the White House is saying this is to counter Communist China's rising influence across the continent. Talk to us about why Biden's trip is so important.
Yes, I'm in Luanda, Angola's capital, and Biden just landed a few hours ago. And this is an important trip because this is his first time in Angola as a sitting U.S. president and first time in Africa during his presidency. And it's a significant decision to come here because Biden has been investing in Africa and African nations for a long time. He has been advocating for them, and starting since 2022 when he hosted a group of nations at the White House. Later, he hosted Angola's president Lorenzo at the White House in 2023. So this is the continuation of that. And he has been investing in the project, which I will be mentioning a lot, but this is a Lobito Corridor project, which is a trade corridor that has railway, but it has to be refurbished. It has to be expanded to be able to use it. And what it does is it connects the Lobito port of Angola to mineral-rich countries of Africa. And what that means is that American companies, the United States and Western countries will have access to these minerals in Africa. And that's an important power struggle at the moment between America, the United States and China. So that's why he wanted to come to Angola to make the case for the investment, to make the case for the incoming administration, because this is one of the bright spots on Africa that could be inherited by the Trump administration. And that's why he's here to basically highlight that signature project that he invested for a long time.
I want to expand on that port. The president is set to visit the Lobito port on Wednesday, which is partly funded with U.S. taxpayer dollars. Now, how will this port fit into Washington's goal of countering Beijing's influence?
So far, we know that the United States has committed to invest $3 billion in this project. And what it does is that the two countries that have significant minerals, one is copper and the other one is cobalt, they are produced in the DRC and Zambia. Those two countries in Africa are very critical for the United States. But those countries don't have gateway. The main port is here in Angola, in Lobito, which is in Africa, has access to the ocean. So what we'll have with the railway project, the United States have in this railway will be able to deliver these metals, important metals for economic security of the United States. They will be transported from these areas to the port of Lobito and from there to the United States. Instead of going to east where they typically shipped to China, this time they will have access to Western port. And that's important for the United States because these metals are important for the U.S., as I mentioned, economic security and national security, because they are used in everyday electronics. They are very critical for EVs. They are critical for defense industry as well.
Now, this has been dubbed a direct counter to Beijing's global infrastructure project that's known as the Belt and Road Initiative. Expand on that for us. Give us a sense of how much of a military economic footprint Beijing has across Africa.
That's correct. This is basically the project of PGI, which was, again, a signature project of the Biden administration. President Biden has initiated this PGI, which is Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment, which is a vehicle, a funding vehicle for these kind of infrastructure projects, which will ultimately counter China's influence in the continent, which will basically be fighting with Belt and Road Initiative. Now, the continent has been invested heavily by China. There are a lot of infrastructure projects going on. In the continent, all African countries, most of them do owe China significant debt. Roughly more than $70 billion is owed to China. And these, as we know, these are Belt and Road Initiative is a part of China's debt trap diplomacy. So this project, PGI, is very important to provide the continent and other developing nations a better alternative. That's what the Biden administration is saying, because most of the time, China's infrastructure projects are associated with corruption, child labor, low standards, and debt threat. That's why the United States and the Biden administration has been actively involved in investing in these countries, specifically Angola, and that's why he wanted to come to Angola to showcase, to show that his project is going to bring both peace to the continent and also provide national security, economic security for the American companies as well.
And Amal, as you mentioned earlier, critical minerals like cobalt and copper are on the line here. How will this Lobito corridor soften prices of those crucial minerals that we need for like electric vehicles for the U.S.?
I think this is significant because what this project will do, infrastructure project, is to reduce the transportation costs. Instead of days, they will be instead of weeks or days, they will be transported easily in hours. So that's important, and it will be a crucial component of reducing the prices. And also, we have to understand that more investment in the continent, in the mining, will bring more, benefit to both sides. And we know that most of the production is under the control of China at the moment, especially in the DRC and Zambia. But if you look at the untapped resources here, this is enormous minerals here, this continent, and more opportunity for companies to invest and mine these. So I think bring a lot of American companies. So thing with Angola, what Biden wants to do is to make sure that the investments and the return on investments will make both sides benefit from these projects. So I think this is going to be one of the key component or parts of one of the most important parts of his legacy, and that's why he is here. Biden is here to tell the significance of this project.
Amel Akan in Angola, Africa for us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
An investigation found tomato puree sold in several UK and German supermarkets and marketed as Italian may contain tomatoes grown and picked using forced labor in China. There's no suggesting the supermarkets were aware of this, but that these Chinese tomatoes entered somewhere higher up in the supply chain. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more for us.
A number of British supermarkets are alleged to be selling Italian tomato puree sold under their own brand name, made using tomatoes grown not just in Italy, but also in China, particularly in the Xinjiang region, and allegedly using forced labor from Uyghur people. BBC World Services commissioned testing of 64 different tomato purees sold in the UK, Germany and the United States. The testing found 17 products sold by retailers in the UK and Germany are likely to contain some Chinese tomatoes. That's despite the name or description of these purees having the word Italian. The BBC's testing included products from British supermarkets such as Tesco's, Waitrose, Asda and Morrison's. All the supermarkets whose products the BBC tested have said they take the allegations very seriously. Tesco suspended supply, and German supermarket chain Rue immediately withdrew the products. Others say that after carrying out their own internal investigations, they found no evidence of Chinese tomatoes. There is no suggestion in the BBC's investigation that the supermarkets were aware that products allegedly contained Chinese tomatoes. China produces 1/3 of the world's tomatoes, and most of these are grown in the Xinjiang region. Xinjiang production is linked to forced labor of Uyghur and other largely Muslim minorities. The United Nations also reported human rights issues such as torture and abuse. The United States last month banned imports from around 30 Chinese companies over alleged forced Uyghur labor ties. These new measures included a restriction on tomato paste. US Homeland Security said they urge companies to take responsibility, know their supply chain, and act ethically. A British Business Department spokesperson said that they are clear that no UK company should have forced labour in their supply chain, and that they keep their approach to tackling forced labour in supply chains under continual review. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, London.
Coming up in college football, what's Ohio State's postseason fate after losing to rival Michigan? Dave Martin joins us to discuss after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Martin now for your sports news. We're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, a big weekend in sports, but let's start in college football as Ohio State and Michigan were fined $100,000 each by the Big Ten for their part in a post-game melee Saturday. This seems to be a pretty big fine.
Yeah, the conference took this seriously. I mean, not only is this a bad look, I mean, it's a safety issue as well. There's more than just football players on the field at the end of a game. You know, you've still got coaches, members of the media, cheerleaders. I mean, other school officials are out there too. Now, Ohio State University police said an officer was actually injured in this melee where pepper spray had to be actually used to break it up. And you could see the effects of the pepper spray on some of the players there. I mean, it makes your eyes water and get all puffy and everything. And this was a rivalry game. You know, Michigan's win and knocked Ohio State out of the conference title game. So, it was, you know, emotions were raw. The Wolverines then afterwards planted their flag at midfield right on Ohio State's logo. I mean, I'm afraid that's pretty much like poking the bear. You know, that fight really lasted a while too. I'll expect to see a lot more security in next year's game, even though it's going to be in Michigan than it was here.
Well, as far as the playoffs are concerned, what does this loss do to Ohio State? Do you think they're still in?
Yeah, I still think so. I mean, that's their second loss of the season, but the two have been by a total of 4 points. The other one was against #1 ranked Oregon by a single point. I still think 4 Big Ten teams get in. That's Oregon, Penn State, Indiana, and Ohio State. But it makes Ohio State's path to a title much more difficult. You've got the top 4 highest ranked conference champions they get first-round byes in the playoffs, so that's not going to be Ohio State now. The other 8 teams play the first-round games, on campus. So you've got true road games here, and who hosts is going to depend on who ranks higher. Now, with 2 losses now by Ohio State, they might have a lower ranking, might have to play a first-round game away, on the road. Now, as for Ohio State coach Ryan Day, he's now just 1-4 against his rival Michigan. That's not going to sit well with his fan base, but a good run in the playoffs certainly would help him out here. So we'll have to see if that happens.
Well, looking at college basketball news, 2-time defending national champion UConn slid 23 spots to number 25 in the latest poll today. That's after a trio of losses last week. Is there a sense the team just had a bad week?
I think there is, and there's plenty to back that up. I mean, the first of those losses was in overtime to Memphis. The second was by just a single point to Colorado. Now, Dayton did beat them by 18 points in that third game, but I think they were kind of sort of deflated by then. This week, I think we're going to find out how good they are. They play number 15 Baylor on Wednesday. Sunday, they're at unranked Texas, but Texas is normally a good team. And then after that, they've got 7th ranked Gonzaga just a week from Saturday. That's going to be 3 tough teams in a 10-day span. Now, early in the season, there's plenty of movement in these polls. That's because of the first polls. It's basically perceived roster strength in the offseason. It's kind of a guess, really, is what I'm saying, plus how good the coach has been historically. Meanwhile, Kansas still ranked number 1. They had a narrow win over Duke last week, despite All-American center Hunter Dickinson being ejected from the game. After them, you got Auburn at number 2, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Marquette then rounding out the top 5.
Now, shifting gears to college volleyball, you've reported several times about the failed lawsuit aimed at preventing an alleged transgender player at San Jose State from competing. What is the latest here? Yeah, after that, a lawsuit and appeal were denied last week. That player went ahead and played in the finals of the Mountain West Conference tournament. The team, though, lost to Colorado State, though, so the Rams get the automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. Now, this story gained national attention after those 5 teams forfeited a total of 7 games against them, the last of which was actually in the conference tournament when Boise State forfeited in the semifinals. Now, although they didn't all publicly say why, Nevada's players, when they forfeited, said they, quote, refuse to participate in any match that advances injustice against female athletes, end quote. Now, this alleged transgender player has not commented publicly about their gender. I'm curious to see if there's a new lawsuit that's going to be filed here, because the Congress did not change their rules about this, and I believe this alleged transgender volleyball player still actually has eligibility left, so they might have to deal with this again next year. And meanwhile, this lawsuit was brought by players across 4 different schools, including one on San Jose State's own team, so it's clearly a very divisive subject. A lot to look forward there as well. Well, Dave, as always, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Tiff.
A startup founder in San Francisco says his company offers no work-life balance and that employees are expected to work 84 hours a week. His statement, posted on social media platform X, has gone viral. NTD's David Lamb reports.
The founder of Greptile is asking employees to work 84 hours a week. Now, we talked to tech workers in Silicon Valley to hear their thoughts on that.
I would say startups are typically more headache in terms of hours, but I wouldn't go that far. As an engineer, I can tell you over time it's gonna, you're gonna have burnout problem, you're gonna have morale problem, stuff like that.
Daksh Gupta, founder of AI startup Greptile, said his company offers an 84-hour work week and no work-life balance. Employees reportedly work from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. or later, 6 days a week, and sometimes 7 days. Gupta says he recently started telling people about the work expectations right from the first interview.
They give you that upfront, but then they don't give you a timeline where that's gonna end. So I would say, if they are constantly being transparent and updating the employees, I think, and employees are, aware of that's happening, I think that is okay. But I mean, you know what you're getting into, right? Maybe you have a high risk, high reward, high stress environment.
According to its LinkedIn page, Greptile is an AI expert that offers a tool to developers and has under a dozen employees. The young CEO says that Greptile won't operate with these hours forever. I also spoke to a tech worker that says he does 60 hours a week and find it hard to do his personal things on the weekends. Now, some tech workers that didn't go on camera said that it depends on the company and that maybe in the short term, something like 80 hours a week is possible, but for the long term, it could cause a burnout. Reporting in San Jose, California, David Lamb, NTD News.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.